Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing The Force Awakens. This film came out in 2015. It was directed by J.J. Abrams. I know, but I had to. I really feel like I had to get to this film because I've made it this far. Why not? So yeah, I know I did initially review this film back in 2015, back when it originally came out, and my review was positive, like, you know, a lot of people. But also my headspace at the time was very much Star Wars was dead to me, so I was very emotionally disconnected from it and not really putting a lot of effort, you know, into a review for it. So yeah, even then I knew I wasn't giving it the attention that it deserved, but you know, obviously now we have a lot of perspective and it changes some things. Not that I really have to give a backstory on this, but obviously George Lucas had sold Star Wars at this point to Disney, which when that happened, that was a huge moment, especially for a franchise that was so groundbreaking in terms of its marketing, its ability to continuously circulate revenue at different points in time for so long. And I know over time there are many people that are quite offended by these new films here, and I notice a lot of people don't even consider it canon. And I am kind of with you on that in the sense that, you know, I don't look at it really in relation to George Lucas's Star Wars films, but, you know, technically they are still part of the same story, and it did kind of revitalize Star Wars for a new generation of kids in the same way that the prequels did for my generation. So yeah, I wanted to look back at it. And again, it is a low bar, but, you know, I just remember it being solid and maybe non-offensive. But, holy fuck, was I wrong. I was shocked by how much I hated this film. Never in a million years did I think I would say that I prefer Attack of the Clones to The Force Awakens, but I mean, it's by miles. I think that Attack of the Clones is better than this particular film. This film is just so deeply insulting, and in ways it doesn't even understand. It is so desperate to look like Star Wars, to seem like Star Wars, to get all of the little details right and all the little Easter eggs and things to make the fanboys happy. And yet, to me, it is so clearly removed from Star Wars more than any of them thus far. No consistency of world building, no consistency of storytelling, and just fundamentally the core is the most faulty by far of any of them. That it doesn't even feel like a film to me. It feels to me like it's a fan film. It's like a fan service type of film. But it's a fan film that is made by people who don't necessarily have the respect that they should for the original source material. It's like they just want to kind of dress up in the costumes for the grams. And I know people are going to think I am going way overboard on this, but no, I think this is a disgusting representation of everything that pop culture has become and fame and all of that. And I am quite serious. It's hollow aesthetics just masquerading as something that once meant something to people. And yes, obviously, you know, reviewing the prequels, they are very fresh in my mind right now. And you know, I still think that they are incredibly bad films, don't get me wrong. And that really hurt after the originals, and seeing George Lucas go from like a rebellious creative type of spirit to somebody who is in like a midlife crisis is naturally kind of sad. And then obviously at this point, it's a whole nother level because Star Wars has basically been bought out by the Empire. But I do think the prequels deserve to be defended because, you know, even though they are bad films, and I don't want people to forget that, it's, you know, there is technically a reason to watch them. It's, you know, like they exist within the Skywalker story, and it provides a certain context for things. Sure, it is sloppy and poorly executed, but there's a reason why things happen, and there is exposition, and there are characters, and again, everything has a reason to exist, and they move the story forward. There is a natural progression, a transition between that prequel trilogy and the original trilogy. Then you get past the 6 films and you go into 9 films, and it's like, it just feels like we are running on fumes at this point because there really isn't a reason for this story. The Skywalker story is basically over. Return of the Jedi ends, everybody is happy and celebrating, and it's very satisfying. It is a proper ending, no loose ends at all there. So, opening the story up again, I'm thinking to myself, you've got to have a really compelling reason why, I think. Because in a sense, you were already naturally driving it into the ground. But yeah, as my friend says, who's been watching all of these films with me for these reviews, it's like, when we watch this film, The Force Awakens, this is the first one where all the reasons to watch it come from outside of the film. For me, that perfectly encapsulates it. That's part of why it is so, I'm so fundamentally averse to it. And the plot that is holding this Skywalker Republic legacy together is the weakest of like a Etch-a-Sketch job. No, we are here to play dress up and swing lightsabers around and go woohoo as we're flying in spaceships. And yeah, it's like a bunch of spoiled kids who have no idea what they're doing. They just waltz in and act as though they deserve all of this legendary status that comes with Star Wars, and they don't know anything about it at all. And I think if you fundamentally care about Star Wars, you would have just written a simple story. Just a simple story. That's all you need here. And all you really need to do is set up this new world. Give us a reason to have this First Order. You know, a reason why they seem to be so big and so epic, 10 times as powerful as the original Empire, even though they seem to have far less resources and far less reason to exist. And obviously it's a tactic to kind of flood us with nostalgia, but then obviously set us up with new characters and new worlds that we can root for going forward. And I can actually understand wanting to go back, you know, closer to home, closer to the roots of what Star Wars was meant to be. This is just so like, this is so just on cartoonish levels. It is so lazy. All it really does is just reveal the weakness of this entire trilogy, just right on the onset. It's retreading familiar territory while reminding us of what was once so much better in the most cynical sort of way. How do you copy something that is very straightforward and very consistent? It's like a perfect example of a solid, consistent script, you know, that perfectly encapsulates the hero's journey, and yet you still manage to fuck everything up about it. The prequels were too ambitious, trying to tackle way too much. And here, I feel like they're going so simple, and yet I'm still confused even more than I was before. And I think it takes a really incompetent team of people for that to happen. It completely misses the point of everything. It's like everything is just conveniently here. Everything is just served to you on a silver platter with no risks. Even just in the opening, it says, "The First Order rises from the ashes of the Empire." And it's like, okay, are you gonna expand on that in any way? Because this is already a giant joke that I just can't take seriously. And that's just like the first sentence in the movie. With Revenge of the Sith going into A New Hope, I feel like, you know, obviously all of that makes sense. It shows us that a really dark future is about to come. But with this one, it's like we had Return of the Jedi. And again, like I said, everyone's smiling and happy. And so how do we go from that to this? I have many, many questions. Not even an attempt at a transition. Who is the First Order? Where did they come from? Why are they here? None of these questions are ever answered. Not in this one, not in the next one, not in the third one. And the plot is just, it is the dumbest plot imaginable. And again, we are saying this about Star Wars. Most of the plots here are stupid, but this here is a whole new level of dumb because it hinges on Luke Skywalker and knowing his location, because I don't know, he could possibly train a new school of Jedi and it must be stopped. And I'm sorry, I just find it weird to think that the Empire would, or no, I'm sorry, the First Order. I find it very strange that everything, all the warfare and everything is hinging on the location of some crippled old dude. And of course, at the center of this film, we have, in place of Luke as our young new hero protagonist, we have Rey. And of course, you know, most people know my opinions on Rey here, and I feel like I don't have to repeat them to a major detail or anything like that. But I mean, yeah, you know, I think she fucking sucks, and she is that Mary Sue archetype, but in the most shameless sort of way, with all the bells and whistles you can imagine. Never once does she truly struggle with a choice or anything really, where we know there's not going to be a safety net all ready for her. And you know, it's all just propagated by Disney, and it inadvertently, to me, condescends to women more than it does prop them up in any sort of way. I like the idea of having a female at the center of Star Wars, and you know, I was thinking initially when I heard that, I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But you know, I want one that I can believe in. I want one that, you know, is somebody I can relate to, that does have struggles and flaws. With Luke, it's like he has a major arc throughout all three of the films. He changes so much from the very beginning. And with Rey, it's like, I can't even find the arc here, really. It is grating how much they are trying to shove down our throats how perfect that she is and how incompetent everyone else is around her. And literally, she has to say things like, "I don't need a man to hold my hand." And then you have Poe, played by Oscar Isaac, and I think he was really done dirty in this film and all of the other two, because in the opening of this film, the first act, he's very much at the center of things. So you naturally think he's going to be a huge part of this whole thing. He is really kind of the stand-in here for Leia as the newly captured rebel. But then he just drops off the face of the earth, and we don't see him again until, basically the third act of the film. And it is that classic fake-out death cliche that comes up way too often in this particular trilogy. I feel like he should have stayed here. He should have stayed with Finn. He should have been local, with the main core, so that, naturally in the next film, they can branch off from each other and actually feels earned. And then they can reunite for Rise of Skywalker, ABC. It's really not that hard. Having someone who was originally a stormtrooper, abandon the First Order to join the rebels, in theory, it could be a compelling story, but it's a tough one to pull off because that is complicated and that is very heavy for Star Wars. And I think if you're going to do it, it would deserve, a lot of weight. But here it's really just given no thought at all. And it's like, I barely even, believe that Finn is a stormtrooper. It's like we see him as a stormtrooper at the beginning, but then all of a sudden he just switches. And it's kind of amazing how quickly he can just slaughter all the people he used to work right next to. And it's like, I have some questions about this guy. Any struggle, any internal conflict that he has is basically non-existent. So I'm really not sure what the point of all of that was. And obviously people like him, people like Rey, they are basically just millennial surrogates for the new generation. They are filtering this whole thing through that, again, that self-aware context of how legendary Star Wars is. It doesn't really make sense within the context. If you see some old guy on the Millennium Falcon, you'd be like, who is that? But no, here, of course, they're like, you're Han Solo. We've heard all about you. We used to read about you in school. My mom would tell me stories at bedtime about you. And it's like a bad curtain call at like a fan expo or some shit. And like most films that try to reinvent a franchise, they have to choose to make all the old characters that they bring back lifeless and dull and inconsistent with how they used to be. And they are also washed up, sad versions of who they used to be, so that the young ones can come in and just show them how it's done. And again, they're not even having to work for a single thing when it comes to it. They are just better for no reason, just because it's, trendy. Every reference here is just kind of existing awkwardly. It's rarely tied into anything. It's rarely clever. And it's like they don't even realize that. At the same time, there is just a smugness to this film, and the whole tone of it is just, I hate it. And even aesthetically, I know a lot of people consider this to be really top-notch, the special effects and all of that. And sure, in some ways it absolutely is. It's like when I look at the Star Destroyers and a lot of the ships, they look like jaw-droppingly phenomenal. The work that went into it and the amount of money, it is all there on the screen in all three of these new movies. And it's clear that that's where the emphasis is. It's on the aesthetic. It's on the special effects and replicating a very nostalgic feeling. And it is true. There are times where it's like, you'll hear a soundtrack just very faintly in the background and you're like, oh, wait, is that an ATST? That said, I don't really care. I feel like they completely missed the mark a lot too. And as much as everything is, dressing up to be like Star Wars, it doesn't feel like it. Like I said, I think really the problem is things here feel too real and maybe a little bit too like artsy conceptual. It has kind of a dated kind of 2015 digital artist painting look to it that is nice. I just don't know if it really fits with Star Wars. It feels a little bit too serious, as I said. And I want more of that sense of exhilaration and fun and spectacle and energy, which is what Star Wars is supposed to be. I don't want new planets that look exactly like the old planets. And everything here, it's like, it's all familiar, but it's more epic, but just in a way less interesting way to me. And it's like, you look at like Kylo Ren and he looks like a thimble. Yeah, he looks straight out of Thumb Wars. And the stormtroopers, the way that they talk with each other, it's like the Star Wars robot chicken. This is like a straight up parody. And if we're really going to talk about the dated aesthetic, what is up with all of the neon lights that are just all over this movie? And I'm talking about like the blues and the reds. It's just this really like trendy LED lighting look that is everywhere. And I guess they're wanting the ships to look hip. Yes, this would make sense if it was like a modern day club or like a modern day millennials apartment or something like that. But it's like, what is it doing in a Star Wars movie? And why does every revelation in this film have to be so ridiculously convenient? Again, as if we are watching a parody rather than an actual film. And I mean, like retrieving the blue lightsaber, you'd think that's a really important moment, or rediscovering the Millennium Falcon is another one. But all of it, it's like, the discovery of the lightsaber, it practically has like a red carpet and spotlights, and it's all just perfectly packaged in some sort of like Indiana Jones gold statue sort of way, because this film refuses to allow you to be in the moment of anything. It's always got to be winking at you and nudging you to the point where it's making you raw. So pretty much this entire thing is a failure just from the very beginning. It didn't even have a leg to stand on in the first 30 seconds of the movie. They don't realize that this story, the Skywalker story, is done. It's over. And maybe this could have been really good in the right hands, but it is just an uphill battle naturally, I think, to the extreme. And yeah, it's going to look like a jerk off from pretty much every angle. It depressed me on a whole other level compared to the prequels. And again, I was shocked by that. And I really struggle with J.J. Abrams just as a filmmaker. I feel like he's maybe proven otherwise, that he has a lot of talents for sure, maybe outside of the medium of film. And I mean that more with television, but pretty much every movie that he's made has come from an existing franchise, is a sequel to something or a remake. And even the one film he made that, you know, tried to be an original work, and that was Super 8, I believe, you know, it just felt like a lesser Spielberg ripoff. But at this point, he feels like the safe choice because there's so rarely originality in these giant franchises like this, and rarely does the meaning of it ever go beyond the corporate desire, really. And it's devastating. It's like, yeah, as I said, the prequels brought me down, but this is evil. But that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website. As always, it is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits, and I also sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question on a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons, who are wonderful guys. Thank you so much for your support. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.